Hello, I'm Victoria DeWong, and along with my fellow group members May Garcia, Brenda Tran, Aurelie Cup, Ida Bekela, and Daniela Lamb, will be presenting our final oral project on the topic of social and emotional development. Outlined here are our mission statements and goals. 1. To identify what environmental and social factors play a part in emotional and social development. 2. To understand what factors influence one's social and emotional development through experiences during infancy and early childhood. And 3. How do our early experiences reflect on our behavior during adolescence and later in life? The main theorist our group focused on is Erik Erikson. Once a student of Sigmund Freud, Erikson is labeled as the father of developmental psychology. He classified the human lifespan into 8 psychosocial stages based on his theories, each of which featured a substantial task to be completed within that time period. The stages are listed below. Erikson's theory has been challenged for having unreasonable expectations because he considered these stages as occurring in an upward stair-like fashion, and believed that if one failed to finish each task level, they'd not be able to move on to the next. When these concepts are applied to reality, it becomes clear that these steps can be repeated or satisfied out of order.
We'll now identify what environmental and social factors play a part in one's social-emotional development. According to Chapter 5, Lesson 5, a few factors are parenting styles, social class, one's culture, and exposure to stress. Now, each parenting style has their own possible outcomes for their child's social and emotional development. But today I'll just be identifying and demonstrating what a few of these are according to our reading lessons. The police officer drill sergeant's primary focus is to ensure the child's obedience, and this parent has a hard time letting them make their own decisions. The martyr will do anything for their child, including things they should be doing for themselves. When the child goes against this parent's wishes, they may use things they've done for their child as a way to guilt them into doing what they want. The authoritative parents are reasonable, affectionate, and strict to a proper degree. The parent will allow negotiations with their kids but are unresponsive with them, including not making demands of them. Lastly, we have the athletic coach parent who encourages and helps their child understand how to handle new situations. This parent lets their child learn to do things by themselves while providing guidance on the sidelines. I'll now specifically address each of the possible outcomes that can affect one's social and emotional development. The police officer drill sergeant's child may develop resentment towards their parents and give displaced anger to others. The martyr's child has learned how to be dependent and manipulative. The authoritative parent's child may be suffering in school and in their friendships and relationships. The athletic coach's child learns how to handle situations on their own with the guidance of parents. Our last few factors are social class, which according to Lesson 5 affects one's environment, as their parents' social standing would very likely be in line with their job. Hence, the values they hold are likely in line with their social class and the type of work they do. For instance, middle-class workers usually hold professional white-collar jobs. Therefore, they'll likely raise their kids with like-minded parenting styles that hold values such as independence and self-reliance, like the athletic coach parenting style. In like manner, culture can affect a parent's choice in parenting styles as well. The last environmental factor we have is exposure to stress. According to Lesson 6 of Chapter 5, being exposed to stress early on in life isn't necessarily a bad thing, since a healthy amount of normal stress can be beneficial for one to develop their coping skills. But when a child is exposed to toxic stress from long-lasting abuse, they can develop a long-lasting effects. Prolonged stress can lead to the child's memory being affected, and they may become hypersensitive to stress because of past exposure to long periods of it.
In addition to the environmental factors just explained by May, we also wanted to look at the social factors or norms that impact the emotional and social development of a child and likely their future self. Based on Chapter 5, Early Childhood, we see many factors that can impact social and emotional development, such as constructs that mold one's sense of self, to how you see yourself, the definition you impose on yourself, and things such as gender roles. Many social factors that impact our social and emotional development and these can have, of course, a positive or negative effect, and everything is usually depending on the context of the stimulus received. We can talk about the social factors influencing child's emotional and social interactions based on the early definitions of right and wrong that parents and family members impose on an infant. This was explained by Herbert Mead in 1967 when he viewed the initial thoughts and behaviors associated with the wants of an infant, and he defined it as the I, or the true self, in which there is a behavior and cognition that is not influenced by social norms of right, wrong, bad, good, etc. So an example could be an infant that sees a dog and it immediately wants to reach for it, but the parents say, no, don't touch it, it bites. And later, the child thinks, I need to be careful and not touch the dog because it bites. Now we see the me, which is an infant that has internalized in some way or another what is acceptable and allowed by the parents or social society and acts accordingly. Moreover, gender, their definitions and roles are very strong social constructs that are imposed on an infant from day one. It can have a huge impact on the social interaction and emotions the child develops. Some examples of this could be guilt, shame, or depression for not fitting into his or her own social construct, constraints from gender-specific activities, feelings of inferiority, etc. As a different form of social factor that can impact social and emotional development of an individual are the labeling of its children as ADHD, autism, or even some common ways of describing this child, such as laziness and intelligent, since this can have an impact on the child's definition of self and hinder many developmental areas, especially important in mild cases. These labels can also lead to stigmatization and unfair expectations or treatment. Lastly, I just wanted to bring into the attention that there is a different theory by Vygotsky, which analyzes how the community and language play a central role in the process of learning. He believes that there is no specific stage of any type of learning, but that this is a result of social interaction. I think the specific example illustrated in the video in which females are imposed by the community to complete specific software tasks. Females are more encouraged to physical activity and problem-solving activities and may not be as accurate in today's society. However, some aspects of this theory are still seen in different forms of the development. Thinking of social and emotional development, females are given the tools to be more in tune with expressing emotions and care for individuals, while males tend to be more dismissive towards others and likely to block emotions. Thank you.
Next, we'll be identifying what factors influence one's social and emotional development through experiences during infancy and early childhood. According to the Chapter 4 reading on infancy, healthcare practitioners, parents, and modern educators devote the most time and attention to this stage. This is due to evident and profound changes in both physical and cognitive development. Another explanation is many people believe that the experiences they had in infancy and childhood most prominently influence their current attitudes and character. The time from birth to 12 months is referred to as infancy. Because attachment is the foundation of a child's self-esteem, sense of comfort and safety, as well as emotional regulation and self-control skills, it's one of the most important aspects of the emotional development. As a result, parental bonding has a substantial impact on social and emotional development, as frequent availability from a caregiver helps to form the foundations of trust and confidence in the child, representing Erikson's first psychosocial stage of trust versus mistrust. Let's have a look at the fundamentals of trust versus mistrust. The main attribute of the stage, which lasts from birth to a year and a half, is hope. An infant's basic needs must be satisfied regularly and continually in order for him or her to trust the world and feel safe. Because infants are so reliant on others, it's critical that their caregiver caters to their comfort, interaction, and stimulation needs. Returning to attachment, newborns have two emotional responses at birth: attraction and withdrawal. According to Chapter 4, there are 4 sorts of attachments. The first one is secure. The child is confident that their needs will be consistently met due to the caregiver's adequate care. Second is insecure resistant, which is marked by insecurity. There's a resistance to participating in activities and play away from the caregiver. Some may exhibit clingy behavior due to the fear that the caregiver will abandon them. Clingy behavior, however, might be a natural component of the child's character or temperament and doesn't always indicate parental neglect. Third type is insecure avoidant. It's also marked by insecurity. The child typically avoids the caregiver and others and knows that their needs typically go unfulfilled. 4 is disorganized. It's the most insecure style of attachment due to the mixed, confused, and inappropriate responses from the caregiver. Typically, they can't interpret emotions well. If a caregiver is unavailable and can't provide sufficient care for their newborn, they are more likely to struggle socially and emotionally as they grow. This is why early childhood attachments are so crucial, since they lay the groundwork for future connections, confidence, curiosity, and self-constant perceptions. We can connect how one gauges the success of a child's growth to Erikson's 8 psychosocial stages of development, and his belief that completing each stage in the proper order would ensure a healthy individual. For example, the social milestone in infancy is reached when they can recognize their caregiver's voice and smell after about 2 months. When vocalization begins at 4 months, the caregiver's role in engaging with them, as well as the manipulation of the environment, has an impact on emotional regulation. As a result, the necessity of consistent and positive social interaction between an infant and their caregiver will help create a strong attachment bond, which will serve as a foundation for the child's future relationships. If the child has unpleasant experiences, they may develop mental and emotional health issues. It's crucial to highlight, however, that not all children will become unstable in both areas, since some can learn to build resilience and handle adversity. Still, it's best to intervene early if a child's social and emotional health is at risk.
My name is Ida Bakela. Our group focus is social and emotional development, and that is what I will be talking about today. My focus is to present to you about early childhood development. Early childhood is the foundation for lifelong learning. Whatever we learn as children has a significant impact on our life and careers. Early childhood begins at birth and lasts up to the age of 8. Erik Erikson is one of the theorists who has something to say about early childhood. He called this stage of development initiative versus skills. What did he mean by that? Well, by initiative, Erikson was telling us children initiate activities by interacting with their siblings and parents at home and with their classmates and teachers at school. Children begin to plan activities, make up games, and initiate activities with others. If given this opportunity, children develop a sense of initiative and feel secure in their ability to lead others and make decisions. This initiation is a form of socialization with others. It goes hand in hand with intellectual development, physical development, emotional development, psychological development, language development, as well as social development. It is important for the growing child to be placed in an environment where learning and socialization occur. If the environment is right and the child can explore, make decisions, and initiate activities, the child has achieved initiative. He or she is on their way to success. However, if the child is in an environment where initiation is repressed, through criticism and control, the child develops a sense of guilt. This child's psychosocial and emotional development will not go well. He or she will be on their way to failure. Some of the areas in early childhood development are physical, communication and language, personal, social and emotional, literacy, mathematics, understanding the world, and expressive arts and design. Remember, because early childhood years are rapidly developing years in a child's life, parents and teachers should use all available tools to nurture these children by giving them plenty of independence and growth opportunities as they grow through this phase of their life. Thank you.
How does our early experiences reflect on our behavior during adolescence and later in life? Adolescence is a period of life known for the formation of personal and social identity. As an adolescent, we must explore test limits, become autonomous, and commit to an identity or a sense of self. Erik Erikson refers to the task of adolescence as one of the identity versus role of confusion. Main questions: who am I and who do I want to be? Changes in the levels of certain neurotransmitters influence the way in which an adolescent experiences emotions, typically making them more emotional and more sensitive to stress. When adolescents have advanced cognitive and maturity, they tend to resolve issues more easily than peers who are less cognitively developed. As adolescents work to form their identities, they pull away from their parents and the peer groups become very important. As adolescents strive for more independence, different aspects of parenting become more salient. For example, parental monitoring becomes more important as adolescents spend more time away from their parents. Psychological control involves manipulation and intrusion into their adolescents' emotional and cognitive world through invading their children's privacy. This is another aspect of parenting during adolescence that becomes very problematic. Identity development is a stage in the adolescent's life cycle. During these years, adolescents are more open to trying on different behaviors and appearances to discover who they are. They usually cycle through a number of identities to find one that suits them the best. According to Erickson, the main and most important developmental tasks for adolescents are to solve the identity versus role confusion crisis, construct their own unique sense of identity, and find the social environment where they can belong to and create meaningful relationships with other people. The idea of self concept is known as the ability of a person to have opinions and beliefs that are defined confidently, consistently, and with stability. Cognitive developments result in greater self awareness, greater awareness of others and their thoughts and judgments. Further distinctions in self concepts are called differentiation. This helps adolescents recognize the contextual influences on their own behavior and the perception of others and begin to qualify their traits when asked to describe themselves. Another aspect of identity is called self esteem. Self esteem is defined as one's thoughts and feelings about one's self concept and identity. Girls are most likely to enjoy high self esteem when engaged in supportive relationships with friends. The most important function of a friendship to them is having someone who can provide social and moral support. Boys are more concerned with establishing and asserting their independence. They're more likely to derive high self esteem from their ability to successfully influence their friends. For example, failure to win or maintain the affection of the opposite or same sex is the major contributor to low self esteem in adolescent boys.
Physical development adolescence. Physical development with puberty usually begins at the beginning of adolescence and is referred to as the maturing of adrenal and sex glands. Puberty for girls also means the beginning of menstrual periods. Both girls and boys grow in rapid height during puberty. Girls tend to start this growth spurt a little earlier than boys do, starting between the ages 8 and 13 and reaching adult height at around ages 10 to 16. Boys usually start this growth spurt at around ages 10 to 16 years old and reach adult height between the ages 13 and 17. Effects of physical development. Late maturing females may feel a sense of embarrassment and are at high risk for depression and self consciousness. Early maturing females may experience bullying and are teased. This can result in depression, eating disorders, and substance abuse. Late maturing males may feel a sense of embarrassment. These males are at high risk for depression, issues with family, and bullying. Early maturing males are more athletic and popular and are at more risk for substance abuse and early sexual activity. All of these factors can have an impact on one's life later on. Some may feel insecure due to these factors and can eventually carry on into their life later on. The ACEs and PCEs. ACE stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. This can interfere with neurological development and could potentially lead to social, emotional, and cognitive impairment. This impairment may also lead to high risk behaviors that cause social problems, diseases, and disabilities. PCE stands for Positive Childhood Experiences. Adolescents that report positive childhood experience have a lower chance of having clinical depression and poor adult mental health, along with healthy relationships with others. These positive childhood experiences have a great impact on adult mental health. In all, early on experiences do have profound and lifelong effects on people later on in life. Both affect social and emotional development and also affects mental and physical health. Integrity versus despair. Integrity versus despair is the eighth and last stage of Erik Erikson's stage theory of psychosocial development. This stage begins at around 65 and ends with death. This stage specifically centers around whether or not a person feels as though they have led a fulfilling and meaningful life. Integrity is when one is able to look back upon their life and feel a sense of accomplishment and satisfaction with the life they have lived. A couple main characteristics that go along with integrity is acceptance, lack of regret, and feeling at peace with oneself. Despair is when one is filled with shame and regret when reflecting on the life they have lived. This can also result in an enormous amount of disappointment with oneself. A couple of characteristics that may go along with despair is bitterness, depression, and regret. With that being said, what one decides to do with their life through their childhood and adolescence It may have a major impact on how one is left to live later on in life. One living with integrity may live a happy and better life than one living with despair, leaving them to live unhappily and filled with regret. How one chooses how one chooses to experience life early on can have a great impact later on in life.
To wrap up, we've each written our conclusions with connections to both our career path, personal life, and Erickson's ideas. You may pause and read as I click through. In addition to our bibliographies at the end, this concludes our presentation. Thank you for listening.